Hey, Inebri-art, before we get into the show today, I just wanted to talk to you about today's sponsor. So I was talking to my daughter the other day, and I asked her what the date was, and she said that time has no meaning and numbers aren't real, but that's not necessarily true as we're coming out of lockdown all over the place. And today's sponsor will help you with that. It's Vaer Watches. Today's episode is presented by Vaer. Vaer was founded with the goal of building an affordable, everyday wristwatch that blends tasteful design with extreme durability and functionality. Vaer returns a sense of dignity to affordable wristwatches and are built to last. Vaer is a true American watch company specializing in both quartz and automatic watches. Vaer is offering our listeners 15% off if you use the code PODGO15. That's PODGO15. Go to vaerwatches.com to learn more and get your new timepiece today. Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, and we've been hosting these non-essential comedy night shows on Zoom and Facebook. Last week, we had a guest comedian that I thought was really funny, so I figured I'd bring them on. Miguel Perez, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Andy. I am very excited. We just met a week ago.
Yes, very excited. You must not.
Was it a week ago?
Yeah, not even. It was Thursday.
All right, I don't even know.
4 days, 5. It's Monday now, so you guys can figure it out.
I think, like 4 moons and 5 suns ago.
And it feels like an eternity because every day has lost meaning.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, stand-up comic. Kind of the generic question. How'd you get started? But were you always interested in stand-up comedy? Was it a later in life kind of thing, or?
No, I can pretty much say that I had a interest in stand-up comedy very early on. I was a very funny kid. Actually, my 3 interests were to be an actor, a soccer player, or a comedian. So it was one of those 3s that was gonna work out for me, I guess you could say. That's what I thought, at least when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I think I've always had it in me, I think.
Yeah, an actor and stand-up comedian aren't like a complete departure. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand.
Right.
Yeah. So I always. The one thing that always really impressed me about stand-up comics, and it is part of acting, is, you think about when you're a little kid and you learn that joke that makes someone laugh, and you say it over and over and over again, and you don't understand why they don't find it funny anymore. Mm-hmm. But as a stand-up comedian, when you perform, you kind of have to have that same energy, and every single time you do your set. How do you do that? How do you maintain it so it feels fresh to you, that you're not just recycling the same words you said 3 nights ago?
Well, the funny thing about me is when I do a joke, you will always find it that it will be different each time. So each place that I tell the joke in gets a newer version of the last time. I don't think I've ever. I mean, obviously as comedy, so the joke, the setup, the punchline, everything kind of like remains the same, but the way you set it up and the way you go into it and get out of it and what you do in the middle of it, it's different, and it makes it different from every other time. So somebody may have heard me tell the joke that I told like last Thursday, 3 months ago, but they're going to be like, oh my God, it was like completely different than the way he said it, if they remember too, of course.
Yeah. So you're not one of those comics that like is very scripted, where it's like, stutter here, stammer there, say, pause for laugh.
Exactly. It's almost like when I see a crowd and I tell the joke, I get the like, you get the sense of the crowd, you kind of read the room, because sometimes like what you say, the way you have it set up doesn't always match with the energy in the room. So you have to like, again, like read the room and go off of those vibes. So sometimes I will slow down a little bit. Sometimes I will add something that happened, like say when I showed up and said something funny, like I'll bring it back up, or it's always a different way. I can probably say that I have never said the same joke the same way over and over, even though I have told the same jokes.
Have you ever kind of added a tag on stage that really killed, and then you could never kind of capture that moment again?
Almost like, like, I don't want to say like almost every time, but it has happened. Like I said, like sometimes something happens at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like bring it back, but it can only work on that place at that time.
Right.
If you try to bring it back again somewhere else, then it's kind of like, that should have stayed there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
you had to be there.
Yeah. It becomes one of those like you have to be there kind of jokes or situations. But like I said, I don't think I've ever told my jokes the same way anywhere.
And where do you kind of, as you're writing, where do you find the inspiration for your jokes? Do you kind of keep a notebook in that Jerry Seinfeld kind of way, or are you?
I used to, when you first start, they recommend that you keep a notebook at all times. So I did. I used a notebook. Then I switched to my phone. Then I switched back to the notebook. Then I switched back to my phone again. Now I'm back to my phone, and I have like a format in which I'm writing them. And then I also keep a notebook.
Yeah.
So it's like, it really is like whatever really works for you, like it's like your work. You eventually like develop a rhythm or like a style that adapts to you. So, sometimes having a notebook in hand works for me. Sometimes my phone works for me. So, yeah.
Do you kind of use like one to filter the other? Like, is the notebook more for like solid ideas that you're working on, your phone more to kind of like jot down quick ideas when you're out and about?
The notebook is more for like sometimes like, when you want to like, I don't know if you're a reader. Do you read?
I am able to read. No, I actually I say it like that simply because I think I've said it on here before. I believe I have an undiagnosed learning disorder. I really struggle with reading. So I read very slow. It's not something I tend to go to. I do much better audio or visually. So it's not something I tend to do.
Well, let's just say for like people out there who read, sometimes you just want to hold a book in your hand, Sometimes you just want to like lick your finger and switch the page.
Yeah.
Or, like, so to me, sometimes I want to write on a notebook. So sometimes I do. And sometimes I don't touch it for like months. And then sometimes I come back to it and I'm like, oh, this could have, or then I transfer that to my phone and then I work on my phone. So it's, like I said, sometimes you just want to like hold a notebook in your hand and a pen and just really write down what you're doing.
Right.
Like, for example, right now I'm working on a like a little short script, like a little short story. And one of the characters is a comedian. So I had to like literally write word for word what that comedian was going to say. So that's like the first time ever that I actually written a whole like
comedy set.
Yeah. It was a 3-minute set. It's a short one, but like I had to like write a word for word with like joke and the punchline and like the little and like everything in this. So that's the only time that I actually have done that. But other than that is just like just bullet points.
Yeah.
Just fill in the words.
Is writing a script and a new quarantine habit, skill, hobby, whatever that you're picking up, or is that something that you've always done?
I started that in 2019, and I'm still working on it. So, no, was it 19? No, I think it might have been 16. Yes, 2016. Did I say 16? I think I said.
You said 19.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's funny because like every time I get depressed, I write on it. So it's been like, just like for such a long time. And actually, after we did that show, I spoke with Sarah Martin, who has her new show. It's going to be on Roku.
Yeah.
And just like I asked her a couple of questions, and she remembered. She's like, "Oh, you were still working on that script?" I'm like, "Yeah, I still have it. Like, I'm actually putting more effort into it right now." And we just talked about that for a little bit, and she gave me a couple of pointers. So, which is really cool, especially from coming like from somebody that had actually did it, and she's doing it right now. So it was really cool, really interesting. But it's just something that was pre-quarantine, but thanks to the quarantine, it picked up a little more.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always had ideas for damn near everything, TV shows and scripts and movies and podcasts and whatnot. And it got to the point where to keep them straight in my head, I had to start a Word document with just kind of like a working title or a description and just rough it out what it was. So they would all stay and not just wander off in my brain somewhere. But because of COVID, I actually started working on a script, and I find it extremely challenging for the aforementioned reason that I don't read a lot. But so I worked, I've gotten the outline and kind of like started with the first scene, and then it's interesting because it's something I've never done before.
Right.
So I found it helpful in the first scene, so for each character, I kind of thought of an actor that maybe not necessarily like, oh, this is the guy who has to be him, but it almost gave me a meter and a rhythm for their voice and the way they would speak. Is that something that you do, or do you just kind of like, maybe use friends or just kind of...
I base most of my characters on people that I have like encountered throughout my life.
Yeah.
So most of the comedians that are on my script, I have like up to 5. It's like 5, could be 6 if I really wanted to write for that extra person. But they're just people that I already have in my head, and I just try to like think how they would say certain things. So it's almost like I'm writing for them.
Yeah.
From knowing them, I'm writing for them. You know what I'm saying? Like just like the memory of them. That's what I'm using to write their dialogues.
Have you ever gotten to the point where the script is in a position where like either you're like, God, I don't know how that guy would react, or kind of go, I know Steve or whoever would act this way, but I need the character to go in an opposite direction, so that you kind of have to alter who they are or change up who in your mind is speaking?
Oh yeah. Of course. Yeah, you because sometimes like you need it to fit the story. Like,
right.
Like maybe my friend doesn't drink, but in this story he has to hold a beer. Like, like I have to do stuff like that too. And I don't really like find it problematic. I think the most thing that I find I find like a roadblock when I'm writing this is every time I open it to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like a conversation. That is not right. So then I start editing again and again and again until I get to the bottom, and then I'm like, I kind of don't want to do it now. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's like my biggest problem.
Do you... I remember like late 80s, early 90s, there was a huge like trend of stand-up comics getting sitcoms, and I felt like the first episode, so like the pilot episode, was always their stand-up bit in sitcom format. Do you intentionally try to keep your jokes out of the script, or like when you write a joke in the script you'd be like, it's really funny but I can't tell it on stage?
Actually, before I got to the comedy club part of my script, of the story, I have one joke in that. It's like 5-6 scenes. I have one joke.
Oh, okay. So it's not generally a comedy?
I don't think so. It's more like a person that is like a pushover, and like everybody kind of like take advantage of him, and he one day just like explodes and he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna kill myself, I had enough. And then like something happens and he doesn't kill himself and ends up at a comedy club with with a girl that he was supposed to meet. Oh, well, it's a bar, but they have an open mic in the back.
Right, yeah.
And, he goes through all this like, oh, I'm getting drunk now, waiting for this girl who never shows up. And he decides to go up, does a couple of minutes, and he's like, here's my suicide note, by the way. And, the girl walks in and she's like, holy shit, I know you're going to kill yourself. And the guy's like, well, yeah, I was. And she's like, well, I was too. So this is kind of weird.
Oh, it's heavy.
So then they kind of like decide to, stick together for a little bit or for a long time. I don't know. It kind of like ends there. I don't really have anything to like follow up with. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at right now.
That totally reminds me of Bobcat Goldthwait. He used to do a bit where he would go up on stage and just be like, oh, I'm really upset. My girlfriend just broke up with me. And then he'd like read a Dear John letter like on stage, and people would be laughing. He's like, why are you laughing? And he would like cry. And he was just a weird dude.
Yeah. So for that part, like I had to write like a small set, but then I had to do like an interaction with the comic, because like I'm looking at my phone waiting for her to like text me back or whatever. Right. Comics like, hey dude, what are you doing? Like, get off your phone or something, which is something that often happens at a club or a bar where you perform and somebody's on their phone and you're always like, what's going on over there? Like, get off your phone.
And that's got to be a fairly new thing within probably the last 10 years or so, right? With the
with the phones.
Is that do you find it more distracting or disrespectful? Because I feel like, hey, I'm up here performing and you're not even paying attention.
It's a bit of both. Yeah. It really depends on who you are. If you're just like, a open micer and somebody's on their phone and you snap, what kind of right do you have to snap? You haven't really done anything. Right. You're, say, like at the Wilbur and somebody like Bill Burr is performing and you're on your phone, then that's really, really disrespectful. So for somebody like me who's been doing it for like 7 years and been retired for the past 3-4 months, it's a mix. It's a mix.
Yeah. You said you retired?
I retired 4 months ago, because of COVID-19.
So do you not intend to go back?
Oh, no, I'm definitely going to pull a Jay-Z. I'm going to come back.
All right.
Yeah.
So retire. You're on furlough.
Yeah. That's actually, that's the word.
Yeah. So where were you playing around 7 years? I feel like everyone I've spoken to lately has been like, oh, I've been at it a year or 2 years or whatever. I think 7 years is probably one of the longest running.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So where did you start? Because you're in Connecticut now?
I'm in New Jersey right now.
Jersey, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started out locally. I used to live in Whitman, Massachusetts.
Shut up.
And, yeah.
Venus Pizza.
Do you used to work there?
No, I grew up a block from there.
No way.
I grew up on Broad Street, yeah.
I grew up on Beulah.
Oh, yeah.
Upper Beulah, and what was the main road? It was like 18, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I used to walk down to Venus all the time.
Oh, that's funny.
Actually, how old are you?
45.
Okay, so you definitely saw this. I mean, did you live in Whitman your whole life?
Yeah, up until like after college.
Okay, so you probably watch a wrestling show on the local access channel.
No, I didn't even know there was one.
Oh, damn it!
I know they used to do like wrestling at like the VFW and stuff.
Oh, okay. No. My friends and I, when we were in high school, this must have been like 2002 to maybe 2006. We used to do backyard wrestling, but then we took it like a little bit farther. We tried to be like professionals. Yeah. So we actually set it up the way it was like in WWE, where we like would sit down and talk and go over our matches, practice our moves. And then one day we decided to go to the Whitman local access channel. Mm-hmm. And we asked Steve, I forgot his last name, but his name was Steve. He was like the director, program director of all the channels or whatever. He had like a cooking channel, like a landscaping channel. He had all kind of like of shows. And we asked him, he's like, we want to do a wrestling show. He goes, will you guys be swearing? We're like, no. He's like, will you guys be like bleeding or anything? We're like, no. we just went over it with it. We pitched it to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, yeah, but if we see something wrong with it, we'll get it off the air.
Yeah. Well, 2000 at that point, I was long out of Whitman. So.
Oh, you were? Oh,
yeah. I probably moved out of Whitman, I would say 95-ish. So.
okay. Wow. Yeah. No, I was still in Mexico back then. Yeah.
So did you go to school in Whitman-Hanson?
I went to school. I did 8th grade in Whitman Middle, and then I went to Whitman-Hanson for 3 years. And then my last year, I moved on to the new high school, and I actually was the first class to graduate from there.
So you were still like in the old school with the portables and
until my junior year. Yeah.
Man, that's brings back memories, man. That was a long time ago.
Trust me, I just went to a trip to memory lane.
Yeah.
From 4 a.m. to like now. Like I've just been remembering like all of those times, and I was actually thinking about the wrestling stuff. And I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, but right now on Instagram I uploaded a video from like one of the wrestling things that I used to do.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and like literally I did that today because I was thinking about that today.
Yeah, I love that because I mean I remember growing up there, and as a kid I was so incredibly bored because there wasn't a lot to do. But I love the fact that you kind of. It seems like you had that creative spark early on where you're like, I'm going to make my own thing.
Yeah. And then I got away from those kids. I separated from them, right? And they had their TV show. And then I went back and I was like, so I got this other crew. Can we have a TV show? So now you had like the whole like, NCW versus RABYW, like every Friday night at like 11 p.m. It was so dumb, but it was
that's funny.
Fun.
But
it was so much fun.
It's like I don't think people realize how accessible local cable access is, and there's kind of like a movement to get rid of it. But I know here in Plymouth, you can become a member for like I think it's like $60 a year or something so cheap,
Yeah.
And that allows you access to their studios, their equipment, their editing bays. They teach you how to use everything, and the only requirement is whatever you make has to be aired on their channel first, and then after that you own it. You can do whatever you want with it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a good deal.
Yeah, so it's crazy, and just in this era of like YouTube and online formats, you can do so much.
I agree.
You have a TV access right there, and it's been something like that's on our list of things that I was talking about earlier, where we have a lot of video content that we want to be working on.
Right.
But,
yeah, man. So yeah, that's just Whitman, Massachusetts. That's where I lived.
Yeah. Home of the chocolate chip cookie.
Exactly. That's when everybody, that's what I tell everybody. Right in front of the CVS, right there on the, what was it? Is it?
That's
7?
Oh shit!
By the Wendy's,
it's
7-Eleven now.
There used to be a restaurant there before it burnt down. God, yeah, that's funny.
That's what I tell everybody, man. So I used to live there, and then I remember I broke up with a girlfriend at the time, and she told me like, "Hey, you should try stand-up comedy." And then we broke up, and I just kind of like put it in the back burner. Then one day on my birthday, I decided that I was gonna give myself the gift of doing stand-up comedy. So I went to North Attleboro, and I did like 3 minutes out of my 5, and I was hooked. Like as soon as it was not a good set.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did it go?
It was actually really bad. I got really drunk with my friend, and because obviously because you're funnier when you're drunk. So.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, everybody knows that, right? Yeah. So I got drunk, then I went on stage, and like it was just such an epic bomb. I think the name of the place was SOTP, like Speed of Thought Players.
Okay.
So, and it wasn't like a huge like octagon, right? That said SOTP instead of stop.
Stop, yeah. Right?
It's painted in red with the white letters. So obviously, Captain Obvious over here looked at the sign. It was like, my dyslexia just kicked in. I thought that said stop instead of SOTP, And the bartender just like, oh my god, this is the fuck is this bullshit? He like seriously questioned his job like every time I saw him every Wednesday.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then like I said, after that I was pretty much hooked, and I just wanted to keep doing it, you know. So I went back the following Wednesday and the following Wednesday. Then I found open mics around Whitman, you know. So like I would go like East Bridgewater or like regular Bridgewater or Halifax or Hanson or like whoever had a music open mic. And I'd get out there and do my thing, and then
so you would go to like music open mics and
oh yeah. That was like the first thing I did
okay.
because I was like afraid to drive into Boston because like I was, you know, it's like I'm from Whitman,
right?
I'm a small town kid. I can't go into this city. They drive like animals over there. So I was like, I need to find like the local open mics. So I did, and that's where I used to go for like, I did that for like a year, like a solid year. I used to like do like Monday through Sunday, just music open mics around towns. And then eventually I started moving forward for more towards the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I was just like, fuck it, let's just go. And I did. And then I, you know, waited like another week, and then I went back again, and then I started going into the city a little more. Then I met people from Providence, Rhode Island. Then I started going to Providence, Rhode Island. Then I met people from like New Hampshire. So then I started going to New Hampshire, Connecticut, Maine, New York, Jersey. Started meeting people from everywhere. So I started going to all of those places, doing shows, doing, you know, mics, doing whatever, just getting out there.
Was there something specific that transitioned you from doing open mics to kind of getting booked?
Yes, just like networking, really. I mean, you talk to somebody, they think you're funny, and then next thing you know, they're like, hey, I have a show. Do you want to be in it?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just kind of jump to the opportunity. You know, that's most of what I did. And like I said, I kept meeting people not just from Boston.
Yeah.
I kept meeting people from out of state. And then they would be like, dude, you're really funny. Like, do you want to do my show? It's in New Hampshire, though. I'd be like, I don't care. Like, I'll go. I'll go to New Hampshire. So yeah, that's why I started going around. Because, like, basically, like, in Boston, like, I didn't really do too much comedy. Like, when I really think about it, I didn't really do too much comedy in Boston.
Were you doing something else, or no? Or you just mean you weren't there for very long?
I was just so much busier doing out-of-state gigs.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
That I didn't really focus too much on, like, in the city itself.
So you almost jumped to a traveling comic right away.
It almost felt that way, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was nicer, too, because you get to do more time and you get paid more.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have to do work at all, and you get paid a lot more, and they feed you. So it's like, okay, so I can do that, or I can not get paid at all, but then people may know me. But they will only know me, like, in that small city.
Right.
So, like, it didn't really make sense, you know, business-wise, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I dedicated most of my years doing comedy just to do it outside of the city. I would barely be in the city, but I knew people in the city. Like, I would still go to, like, an open mic or two, or, like, I'll do, like, a show here and there during the week. But then most of my weekends were outside, out of state.
And I mean, I think that's the goal, is to not just be a Boston comic, right? But to be a comic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that's what I wanted to be. You know? Like, I understand everybody has different goals and everybody has moves at their own pace, you know?
I mean, you could have been the biggest Whitman comic ever.
I mean, I could have. But fucking Joe List is, like, the one.
Who the hell's Joe List?
What? Joe List? That's a funny reaction. But he's Joe List is a kid that grew up in Whitman, went to Whitman Middle, went to Whitman Hanson.
Yeah.
And then when he was 18, moved to Boston, then made the transition to New York. And now he's, like, one of the biggest comics here.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Like, I didn't
tour with Louis all over the world.
No shit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Like,
from Whitman.
When I think of famous Whitman people, he's not on the list. Ha.
That's funny.
But I mean, Whitman's got a handful of famous people, you know. Right.
Drummer from Journey.
Drummer from Journey, the sax player from well, he was from Hanson, but we'll count him. He went to our high school. Sax player from Sha-Na-Na. Come on, you don't get much bigger than that.
That's true.
So at what point did you be like, all comics are required to have a podcast of their own and take that plunge?
I mean, I started pretty early on. I started very, very early, like when podcasts weren't really like out yet.
Yeah.
But there was like people selling like kits for it. Like, you know, like you could buy like 2 microphones and like a thing, like a little mixer and like, you know, $200. And, you know, like I made the investment and I just literally had it for years. I never used it.
So you bought the equipment and was like, I'll do that at some point.
Exactly. It was just like, I got it. I just don't know. Because like it came as an idea with my dad. I was talking to my dad. We used to drink in his garage, and he used to tell me all these crazy stories. And I'm like, we should do a podcast. And he's like, what is that? And I'm like, I had to like explain it to him. It's like a radio show, but you can swear.
Yeah, and it's on the computer, and
people listen to it.
Yeah,
but we never got to do it. But I bought the kit and everything. And then when I finally got to use it, it just didn't work. So I was like, fuck this. My second attempt to do a podcast was with my friends, EJ Edmonds, which you met last Thursday, and our friend, another dear friend of ours, Alan Fitzgerald, who will be on your next show.
Okay.
I guess he will be headlining. And we got together and started doing a podcast, and then we did it for a long time. Then Alan went to rehab, and we kind of stopped.
That happens.
I know. What a piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
No, he's doing better, of course. He's been sober for like 2 years, I think.
Nice.
But yeah, then we kind of like brought it back and it picked up again, but then it just didn't go anywhere. Then I started another one with another set of friends, and that didn't go anywhere. And then finally one day I was hanging out with my girlfriend. I was like, we should do a podcast about things that me and you do. And all my friends laughed at me.
Yeah.
All my friends laughed at me. But I was like, it's fuck it. It's just me and my girlfriend. We'll talk. We'll do a car cast. We'll do a gym cast. We'll do a fucking go to the store cast.
Yeah.
And we did. We recorded a couple episodes, but again, nothing came out of it. And then one day we were watching the show 90 Day Fiance. I don't know if you heard of it.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So we were watching it, and we were talking about it, and we were so passionate about it. And then I just looked at her and I was like, we should do a podcast about 90 Day Fiance. Like, I have the equipment. I have the what do they call it? The room, I guess, on Podbean. I got like the thing, the network, everything. Like, I have everything. I just need content.
Right.
So we do a 90 Day Fiance podcast. And she's like, that's a great idea. So we started doing that. And again, my friends laughed at me. They all laughed at me. And now it's like it's a big thing. 90 Day Fiance like exploded just this year actually, and our podcast is doing very well. We average about between 1,000 to 1,200 downloads per episode.
Wow, that's great.
And we got a Patreon, and we do like watch-alongs every Sunday, and it keeps us busy. We don't have over 200 episodes, but we're getting there. We have like 160, 170, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'd still take your downloads. I mean, we have a lot of episodes, but it's one of those. Ours is so.
Oh, and you want to hear what the kicker is?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, all of those friends that laughed at that
want to be on the show.
Already were on the show, and they loved it so much that they got hooked on the show, and now they're like regular guests on our show. Nice.
Yeah,
so that was really funny.
It's ours is so guest driven that oddly enough for us, COVID has been I hate to say this, but a plus.
Yeah.
Because I'm just recording just to keep myself busy, really, and we've gotten some amazing guests because people are sitting around and have nothing to do, and we're like, hey, you want to go talk for an hour? They're like, yeah, sure, why not? So we've really expanded our audience. And it's starting to show. It took a while because I don't know if you guys saw a drop when quarantine started, but our audience dropped, I'd say, by about half.
Whoa.
And I personally, I think it's, me, I listen in the car and when I'm at work to podcast, and, so I listen to almost nothing now.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Most of the people that do listen to the show keep saying like, we're still working, so we still listen to podcasts during the day, and they just have basically like background noise. But yeah, you can totally see like a different a difference between like, sorry, between like 4 or 5 months ago to like now. Like now it's starting to pick up again.
Yeah.
For both, for like our Podbean numbers and our Patreon numbers. So it's like it's starting to pick up again. But before, yeah, you totally could see a drop in a lot of I think everybody went through the same thing, because of the same reason that you said, like everybody listens to it when they're doing something. You take that away from them and they're just at home. Like you're gonna watch TV instead of, listen to podcasts.
They're gonna watch Tiger King or whatever.
Yeah.
Where your show is so specifically orientated, do you fear the day that 90 Day Fiance gets canceled?
No, absolutely not. I do not fear it. And the reason why is because right now, like I said, it's probably stronger than ever. And it reaches it's probably like it's peaked right now because of the last season. They have, I don't know if you saw this, a big character called Big Ed.
Yeah, there's like I know of the show. I've never. Oh wait, the guy with the big huge neck that was
with
like
no neck at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's like 4'7", and he has no neck.
Okay.
He was like a guest. He went viral on YouTube for like a month.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was basically a 90 Day Fiance, and because of that guy, a lot of like the 90 Day Fiance got a lot of attention from like the mainstream media. So that was pretty cool, and we kind of like rode that wave. So back to your question, like, do I ever feel that it gets canceled? Absolutely not, because they have so much content. It is ridiculous. Because you not only have 90 Day Fiance, you also have 90 Day Fiance before the 90 days. Then you also have 90 Day Fiance Happily Ever After. Then you have What Now? Then you have Self-Quarantine. Then you have like all this other branches that are on the 90 Day Fiance tree that you're like, I'm never going to run out of fucking material.
Wow, I've never even heard of half of that stuff.
And the fans are very, very like supportive.
Yeah.
Like very, very supportive. It's like a really, really nice community.
Have you ever had someone from the show reach out to you guys?
We had plenty of people on the show, and we had a lot of people reach out as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had mainly like some really good cast members. Actually, we ended up going to one of the cast members' house in Connecticut, and we had like a little wine tasting episode.
Oh, that's cool.
He got us some wine, and we tested it, and it was cool. We ended up spending like 8 hours with him.
Yeah.
And just like hung out with him, with his family, and we talked about this show, and we talked about everything. It was really, really nice.
So I know my personal pet peeves with people starting podcasts, and there's always the generic advice of people like, oh, what do I need to know? And be like, sound quality, keep the inside jokes to a minimum, if at all, and consistency. But like, what's the key? Like, what would you tell people that is the most important thing?
Definitely content. Definitely. You got to have content. It has to be whatever it is, you have to have something to talk about every week. So definitely content. I guess it falls under the umbrella of consistency.
Yeah.
But definitely content. I mean, there's been like a couple of times that we've been like, late 2-3 weeks with an episode. And people are like, well, you guys are late, but you catch up.
Right.
But like, as long as you have content, like, it doesn't matter if you're consistent. It does matter that you're consistent, by the way.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if you have content, it's not like a big, it's not a bad thing.
Right. And I mean, that those kind of hiccups happen, especially when you're not, NPR and it's your career.
Right.
Yeah, we've been doing this. It'll be 3 years in July, I think. I think it's 3 years in July. And we've had 1 month where we went dark, kind of unannounced. I was struggling with some life issues and didn't really want to talk to people. which makes it hard to interview people. And it was right around Christmas, so we went dark. We didn't, and then just afterwards, we just picked right up, and we were like, we're not gonna let that kind of hiccup. We're just gonna get right back to production and keep the ball rolling. And then I was looking at it earlier today when lockdown started, because initially, when we were like, okay, what do we want to do? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I hate phone interviews. I'm not doing any phone interviews. and prior to lockdown, I think we had done 2. So you're talking probably 175 episodes or so with only 2 phone interviews. Everything was in person. So when the lockdown started, it kind of became like, okay, now what are we going to do? Because we can't record in person. But I'm still happy with the way it kind of all rolled out, and I think when things go back to normal, I'll be more apt to use Zoom, but I still would rather record in person. I think it's a
different experience, man. It's like the same thing with comedy. It's like you can hear people laughing over on Zoom, but it's not gonna give you the same. It's not gonna be the same reaction as hearing somebody in front of you laughing. You know, it's like kind of like the live reaction. That's what really makes something really like special.
Yeah, and you can just, read the person's body language better. It's just something different about staring at a computer screen and staring at another person. So I definitely miss it.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, it kind of like changes the way would be interacting as well. For example, like I'm not wearing any pants right now, and if I wasn't wearing any pants in front of you, this interview would be fucking weird.
I don't wear any pants when I interview people. No, but you're right. It's just there's that kind of intangible. Do you normally record when you have guests on in person, or over some sort of?
Well, the thing is, like, most of our cast members and listeners are in different areas of the country, of like even the world. Really, we have people that listen to the show constantly from like Netherlands, Sweden, UK, and sometimes they'll send us a message like, "Hey, can I be on the show?" And we're like, "Fuck yeah, of course." They'll come in, and they won't come in, but they'll talk to us through like Instagram.
Yep.
So we'll talk to each other so we can see each other and we can like talk. The sound quality sometimes not the best, so I tell them like, hey, just use headphones.
Yep.
But I think I'm gonna start doing more on Zoom. We just started doing Zoom.
Yeah. And
we realize it's like so much better than Instagram, so we're gonna start using it.
It makes it so easy.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know what the runtime is on your show. But if you're going to record for more than 45 or Zoom for more than 45 minutes, it's like $15 a month. So it's cheap money.
Well, we just got a deal. It's like $12 a month.
Okay. Like
yeah. So it's like 100 and something a year, but again, it doesn't matter. It's money that comes out of like the Patreon. So we're just investing it right back into the podcast. Mm-hmm. So, it's whatever, Another thing, like you said, like I was saying, we got people all over the place, so we have to have good audio,
right?
And what was I gonna say about people from other states?
I find it such a trip to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So what I was gonna say is, so because most of our listeners that want to participate on the show are from out of state or like out of the country, it is very easy for us to just communicate through the computer.
Right.
And but other than that, I think maybe at some point we'll have live cast. But again, it's not very probable, but it could happen.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a matter of proximity,
Right. That's another thing,
If they're in LA, they're not going to drop what they're doing to fly out to be on your podcast. No offense.
Right.
So then it's a matter of like, okay, well, when are you going to be in the area? Because there's been a lot of people who I'm like, oh, let me know when you're in the area. And then it's trying to hook up with them while they're on tour or whatever. And
well, yeah, that's the thing. Like there was going to be a 90-day con for like fans, and it was going to be held here in New Jersey. But then 90 Day Fiance got the people at TLC got a hold of it, and they were like, "Oh shit, you can't do that because that's our property, so we're not gonna do it." So they like shut the whole thing down. But
Which
I was
sucks
looking
because
forward to
it's
it.
like, yeah, it's people, it's literally promoting your show. So I get they don't want people to make money off their intellectual property, but it's still like they're advertising and telling you how much they like your show.
And I was looking forward to it because I wanted to interview all of these people coming in.
Yeah.
You know, whether they were fans of the show or cast members. So that's what I was looking forward to the most. And I was here in Jersey, so I'm like, fuck it, let's just get a hotel room and bring them back to the hotel room nearby, and we can just interview whoever.
I would have gone to the promoters and been like, hey, make my show a panel.
Oh, well, we were working on that as well. So like, kind of all fucked. Everything got kind of fucked, but it's fine. It's fine. Like I said, we still talk to a lot of cast members, and we're doing all right. They like our show.
If you had to choose between the podcast and stand up, which would you rather do?
It's a tough one. But I would have to pick stand up all the way. I don't see myself doing anything else but stand up comedy.
Yeah.
But I will say this though, I love doing the podcast. I love podcasting. It's another one of my favorite things to do. And through this show, I've met a lot of people. Like I did shows in Georgia,
mm-hmm.
and people from the show came out. And actually, I did it with one of the cast members,
mm-hmm.
Because they heard on the podcast, or like they heard it like locally, and they're like, "Oh shit, yeah, like we'll go hang out." Or people from like Seattle are like telling me, like, "You should come to Seattle." Or like people in LA, they're like, "You need to come to LA." I'm like, "Oh shit, like maybe this is the thing that I need, to like cross over, like not cross over, but like bring the two things that I like doing the most together." Mm-hmm. Which is a podcast and stand-up comedy. And then I would just write jokes about 90 Day Fiance, I guess.
Well, it's funny. It's like, I think that the question that I get asked the most is, oh, do you make money from this? And I have to be like, kinda, in a roundabout sort of way. We're not big enough to get, Casper Mattress and MeUndies and Blue Apron sponsorship by any stretch of the imagination. But we have had sponsors, and generally we give them sponsorship in trade. One of our past sponsors, Airship Notebooks, would send us sketchbooks. And then at our art events, we would pass out, and like, hey, with the price of admission, you get a free sketchbook. So we're raising the attendance of our events from the sponsorship. So I think, if you're not getting that 10,000 downloads an episode or whatever it is you need to qualify for Casper Mattress and those guys, I think it's finding those unique and interesting ways to increase income through podcasting. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you can advertise where you're going to be, and you have a fan base that will go out and see you.
Yeah. Patreon is another way.
Yeah. Patreon, sure.
There. Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's been like the best thing for us.
When you have something like Patreon, generally when you sign up, you're paying whatever amount a month. There's like bonus like you give them extra stuff. Like how do you keep the Patreons? Like, what do you do to give them?
Well, most of the watch-alongs that we do every Sunday are for Patreon members only. So that's like something that no other podcast that is 90 Day Fiance related is doing. So that's like a unique thing that you can find on our show. We're also release the episodes early, and they don't have any like commercials or any plugs or anything. We just kind of like go straight into the show. And we play some music before the show and then some music after, and it's just it's just like a more relaxed, more fun environment. And obviously off of Patreon you get the ads and you get everything else, and You don't get the watch-alongs. You get the, you don't get music. It's just kind of like a show with advertising.
Right. Do you get you don't get the Blue Apron and those guys yet, do you?
No, we're working towards that though.
Yeah.
We're gonna work our way. Yeah, we want all of those big ads. Yeah.
I mean, everybody does.
Yeah. As of right now, we have to settle for like Waymaker sunglasses. And, see the world through the eyes of God, and fucking dumb shit like that. But it's whatever. We're all working, we're all hustling. I mean, it's not different than stand-up comedy. Where you have to start at the bottom, build your audience, build your way up, and once you're up there, you can do whatever because you've already struggled and you've already experienced everything. So you don't go from like 1 to 100. You went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
You work your way up. So when we're working our way up, and once we're up, it's gonna be fucking crazy.
And it's funny just having a sheer large back catalog can give you so many more downloads, because when someone new finds you, when you have 10 episodes, if you find 4 new listeners that go down and download all your back episodes, that's 40 more downloads. But when you're approaching 200, you have 1 new listener, and that's like a 200 spike download every time someone goes back and checks out or downloads all the old episodes.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I get to check, all the statistics and everything, all the analytics of the show, and I see people downloading like our first episode.
Yeah,
and I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, I hate when they do it. I'm like, oh, it's so bad. It's so terrible.
Exactly. I'm like, that shit sucked.
Yeah.
But they go back all the way to the very first episode and they download it.
Yeah.
This is like on Apple Podcasts, we only have 100 episodes.
Yeah.
The first, like the latest 100 episodes. Mm-hmm. So for the first ones, you have to go to Podbean for that.
Right.
So people are going out of their way outside of Apple Podcasts to go into Podbean to download that episode specifically.
Right.
The very first one, second, third, fourth, like they always have downloads.
I always wish they gave you their email so you could email and be like, man, don't listen to them in order. Listen in reverse order at least.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how this whole thing and like another thing that we have that is very like exclusive is like we have like cast members on the show. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of podcasts have cast members on the show. And Not only that, but people say like, "Oh, are you guys doing interviews?" We're like, we're not doing interviews. We're just having guests. They're our guests.
Yeah.
We're not going to interview them. We're going to talk about what they want to talk about. That's it. We're not asking questions. We're just going to talk. We're going to shoot this shit. We're going to chill. So people like our listeners, our friends, we call them our friends, they get to hear a different cast member. They don't hear that cast member from the show. They hear the real person.
Yeah.
Like if I invited you to our podcast and you were a cast member and we talked about podcasting or like music, things that interest you, so the people that are listening can get to know you.
Right.
So that's like our approach. And that's why our episodes with the cast members are so special. It shines a different light on them.
Yeah, I love that because, I mean, that's one of the things that, at first, my producer, editor Fish, I always thought it was me being lazy, but there was a little bit of method to my process. Was I don't do research. I'm not gonna research who you are and what you've done because I'd rather ask you. And if I do the research and start to like formulate a plan, okay, well, I'm going to ask him this, and this, I stop listening to you. Because I'm trying to figure out like, oh, how am I going to work what they're saying into the next question? What segue am I going to use? And I'd rather not do that. I'd rather pause for 30 seconds, which can be edited out if it has to, and think of something insightful or like, hey, that interests me the way, that you're interviewing people and kind of spin a question off of that. So I really appreciate that kind of casual conversation interview. And it's what I like to listen to too. So maybe that's just,
it's so much better. Yeah, exactly. That's another thing that's what we like. So we go about it this way. And I listen to all the other 90 Day Fiance podcasts, and
how many are there?
It used to be like 6 or 7 when we
Yeah.
started doing it like a year ago. Now there's like fucking 20.
It's crazy.
And they're just like, some of them are just 90 Day Fiance, some of them are like 90 Day Fiance, or like Love After Lockup, or they cover like MTV reality shows, or everything in between. But we're just like just 90 Day Fiance focused, and that's and I think there's like maybe like a couple of them that are like that, maybe like 4 or 5 that are like just 90 Day Fiance.
I feel like there's so many podcasts that it's hard to kind of separate yourself from the crowd.
Yeah.
When you're doing something where there's only 6 or 7, you're like, okay, you're an early adopter, you're on the ball first. But I mean, I've had friends be like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. Be like, cool, what's it going to be about? Then be like, wrestling. And be like, what about wrestling? Well, we're going to talk about what happened on the last show. I'm like, yeah, you and like 90 other shows, like, including shows that have actual wrestlers on them. So it's like, what are you going to do that's going to be distinctly different?
Right.
That's going to capture your audience. Is that something that you think about, that you tried to, or
well,
just
yeah,
kind of like,
absolutely. Yeah, man. We think about that, like, basically like how to be different than everybody else. Like I said, I listened to a lot of like the other 90 Day Fiance podcasts and see how they were doing things. And actually, the only reason why we got Patreon is because there was another podcast that is like the most successful one, which is Cray Cray, that has like, they make like tons of money. They make thousands of dollars monthly on Patreon because they have so many subscribers. So I'm like looking at their Patreon going, what's the recipe here?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to like copy what they did because I want to not copy, but I want to reenact that. Like I want that. I want that structure that they have that made them successful, and apply it to our method of doing our podcast, so we can also be successful.
Sure.
So one of the things they do is that they split their episodes in half, which I think is kind of rude, by the way. So they play like the first part on normal podcast and then the second part on Patreon.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. So, but I think it's kind of like, I don't like doing this, so I didn't do that. But like,
yeah, I feel like I would be less likely to. I mean, if you're a Patreon member, that's fine. But if you're not, I'd be like, well, I'm not going to listen at all then.
Right. Yeah. But they also have more content over on Patreon, so like that's another thing. That was like, okay, we need more content on Patreon as well, so we need to start doing that. So we won't cut off our shows, but we'll definitely add more shit to it. So that's what we started doing, like the watch-alongs, and we're doing like an extra episode every once in a while. We're gonna start doing more, like just like recently we decided we're gonna start doing more because there's more shows coming out at the same time about 90 Day Fiance. So we have to like organize it, so all of that stuff is going to be extra. It's going to be on our Patreon, and then it's going to be stuff on our regular wall, and it's it's a whole thing. It's so crazy, man. It is so crazy.
It's I don't think people realize how much work is involved when they're just like, hey, let's start a podcast, and we'll be like, the McElroy brothers and make a boatload of money. Like, there's so much work involved, even just to do it for fun,
Yeah, like for example, when I was doing it with my friends, it was fun for like the hour, but I didn't have to count the hour that it took me, or hour and a half that it took me to drive from Boston to Providence, Rhode Island, and then I didn't have to count the hour that I would have to drive back, and then like another hour to fall asleep.
Right.
Or, the extra hour if I go to an open mic after. So it's like, there's just so much work involved into just that 1 hour that you put in.
Are you like me where I mean, this is one of 3 shows that we have, and I'm constantly coming up with ideas, being like, oh, this would be a really cool podcast. Almost like, oh, I'd like to listen to this podcast that doesn't exist. Where I've been forbid to start more. Because Fish is like, I'm not editing anymore. But do you have ideas for other shows, or are you just
I do.
Like, this is where it's at?
No, no, no. I do. I do have more ideas. Actually, my second podcast is a show on Instagram Live.
Oh,
On Instagram Live, and what I do is I record the audio, and then I put it as a regular episode.
oh, nice.
So the whole point of the show is that if you haven't seen the show 90 Day Fiance, I ask you to watch one of the episodes. Then we go on Instagram Live, and we talk about it, and you tell me what you see.
Oh, okay.
And it started out just like a silly thing that I did with a friend.
Yeah.
And I think we've done maybe 10 episodes. It's a very recent thing that I started doing. And but people are reacting to it. They're like really, really liking it because they get to see somebody that's never watched the show before.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to see what the reaction is and like what they think about it because they're not fans. They're just new people. So I call it 90 Day Virgin.
Nice.
And then we
I don't even know. Did I ask? Did I ask you what the name of your podcast is?
No.
I'm such a good interviewer. I at least got your name out.
It's just part of your method.
Yeah. I knew I'd get there eventually.
Yeah. We got there. We're here now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It's all part of your strategic
it's at the end of the interview. That's where you want it to be, so they remember. So, Miguel Perez, what is the name of your podcast?
It's called 90 Day Fiance. I want my podcast.
I want my podcast. Is that I'm assuming that's a show reference of some kind?
It is 100% a show reference. There's this one cast member that we had on this show twice, and she's like the queen of the show. She's like one of the most epic cast members of all time. Yeah. And she's a super nice lady. But in one of the tell-alls, which is a reunion show basically, she was confronting her fiance at the time, Mohammed, and Mohammed yelled at her. And Mohammed told the host how this lady treats him. And I quote, he said, "She always wants to have sex with me. She'll cry on the floor yelling, 'I want my sex. I want my sex tonight.'" Unquote. So, but we were thinking of names for the podcast. We thought, oh, what about I Want My Podcast? Like, I Want My Sex, I Want My Podcast.
Yeah.
We had that lady on our podcast before, twice, like I said, and she absolutely loved it. She thought it was like one of the funniest things ever.
In meeting these people, do you ever... Is it kind of like that magician telling you how the trick is done? Is there a point where you're like, oh, this person who's a pain in the ass on the show isn't really a pain in the ass? Or like, is any of the mystery gone away from the show?
No, not really, because the way we do our podcast is it's a recap show, right? Mm-hmm. So we basically go off what happens on the show. Like anything outside of their personal lives, we don't really talk about, even though there's other podcasts that do, and there's other shows that do, and meme accounts that post everything. We don't like to focus on that because that takes away from the show. It's like when you watch wrestling and somebody tells you the results, and you're like, "How do you know that?" And they're like, "Well, I watched the dirt sheet." And you're like, it kind of takes away from the magic of it, whether it's fake or real or anything. It takes away from the show. So we decided not to go into that territory. We decided just to go from what we see on the show. So when it comes to moments like that, when we talk with them or we have them as guests, you get to see a new person. And it's so nice to see somebody new, somebody that you didn't see on the show. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think also we're a little different.
Nice. So, Miguel, where can people go to find out more about you and your comedy? Is there a YouTube channel? When are you now announcing your unretirement? That kind of thing.
Yes, I will be coming out of retirement. Hopefully, when this pandemic ends, which I think they're starting to say that the New York, New Jersey area is going to be end of July, maybe August.
Yeah.
So I don't really have anything right now booked. for comedy, but
Well, strangely, I think this episode will probably be going up in August. Like I said, I've recorded so many.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so this is going to be going up for not quite a while from now. So,
all right, then you'll probably see me at the Lantern Comedy Club.
But where can they go? I mean, yeah, you must have an Instagram and social media and shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for social media, I mean, if you want to follow the podcast, if you like the show 90 Day Fiance, you can go to it's at 90df_ I want my podcast on Instagram, I want my podcast on Facebook, or if you want to write an email, I want my podcast at gmail.com. And if you want to talk to me, which I honestly don't know why you would want to talk to me, you can go to Mucino Comedy, that is MUCINO Comedy on Instagram.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for taking part in our comedy show last week, and thanks for coming and chatting with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, this was really fun, and again, we didn't really get to talk too much about comedy, but I'm glad that we got the podcast out.
Yeah, it's one of those that goes wherever it goes.
Yeah,
so you know,
it was fun though.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, no problem. Like I said, this goes up quite a while from now, so I'll tag you and you'll be like, oh shit, I forgot I did that.
I'll be like, oh my god, what did I say? Am I gonna get canceled? Are we not allowed to say podcast anymore?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be like Reformed Radio or something like that.
Yeah,
like I'm pretty sure I said like 17 times. Fucked.
All right, man. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art, except for Instagram, we're at Inebri-art6. You can email us with your questions, complaints, and whatnot at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And if you're looking for more podcasts, you can check out the other podcasts on our network, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror, and, of course, Bar Talk, Old Colony, and Inebri-art Podcast, the original. So check those out and subscribe and comment so we can reach more people, and thanks for listening.